Hello, everyone. This is Natalia Senior Han from our World Bank Group MT Climate Ambassador 2024 cohort. And I'm very glad to sit with Mr. Chen Guangzhe from World Bank Group. Mr. Chen, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, I'm Guangzhe Chen, Vice President for Infrastructure at the World Bank. Very nice meeting you, Katarina.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Chen. So actually, we are very glad to invite you to be here sitting at the World Bank Pavilion. So I actually have lots of questions compiled by other youth representatives from the same cohort. The first question is, based on your prior work experience, you are very familiar with urban development, renewable energy, infrastructure construction, and also cross-sectoral collaboration. So from your perspective, how on earth the World Bank can bring lots of changes to countries to improve their development, including creating better cities and low carbon transportation? Please explore more.
Thanks very much for that question. It's a very broad question. Yes, through my professional career, I spent decades working in infrastructure, including transport, energy, urban development, water supply, and sanitation. I see infrastructure is a basic need for human development. But there's a huge gap on infrastructure, access to infrastructure, particularly in low-income and low-middle-income countries. Worldwide, we still have something like 700 million people have no access to electricity. And we all know what is so necessary to have electricity before human being can benefit from many of the modern developments. While we take it for granted, for digital economy, worldwide we still have 2.5 billion people don't use internet for a variety of reasons. Over 2 billion people don't have access to safely managed drinking water. 1 billion people live more than 2 kilometers away from access flow. And all this is really highlighting there's a huge infrastructure gap in low-income and low-middle-income countries. And how do we fill that infrastructure gap is one of the development challenges we face for many years. Of course, the Sustainable Development Goal of the United Nations set some target by 2030 to meet some of those objectives, but we are actually not progressed enough to meet all these targets by 2030. And that's the basic need. But at the same time, we also need to recognize that country growth, countries' demand for infrastructure service will grow, which means that we will need much more financing to bring in this kind of infrastructure service to meet the need of the people. In addition to that, as climate change impact intensify, we also need to build infrastructure in such a way that they can stand the impact of the climate change. We have all seen in recent years how much natural disaster induced by climate change have impact on infrastructures. To make it worse, we also have man-made destruction of infrastructure because of regional conflicts, wars ongoing. So all these point to the need that there's a huge demand for infrastructure, but we need to bring finance and we need to bring government institutions in such a way to manage them properly. The World Bank can play an important role on that to bring in catalytic financing, but at the same time using our finance to mobilize more financing for the countries needed. We also can bring in many decades of our experience working in development as sort of so-called knowledge service for our clients, and also we can bring convening services, bring the country together to meet all these challenges.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Chen, for your detailed explanation on the topic. I actually do have a follow-up question. You know, NCQG is underway, and what you believe that World Bank can probably bring forward to the table and change the climate in the climate negotiation on the climate finance, because you know China and India are currently collating G77 to dive into the climate finance negotiation. What may be happening, and in your opinion, what WBG can do?
Well, we can do a number of things. First of all, we need to support country to form such agreement. The COP29, as you know, COP is a convening of parties. These are country parties. Country need to negotiate and agree on a set of objectives moving forward. We have a role to play. We can facilitate this kind of collaboration. We can also commit ourselves to increase our financing for climate adaptation. We already set a target 18 months ago of bringing 45% of our total financing for climate, and we already meet that target. We can certainly up the ambitions. We can also play a convening role to bring in finance together to support climate change priorities across our countries. We host a number of those facilities, like global environmental facilities, global climate investment fund facility, things of that nature that can help mobilize more finance for this kind of climate change requirements.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Chen.
If I may also, Catalina, I'm really curious about, for young advocates like yours, what do you think the World Bank should focus on in terms of supporting climate change adaptation and mitigations?
It's a very interesting question because from my perspective, due to the recent report published by World Economic Forum, like air pollution, extreme weather events, major changes to Earth systems, and also biodiversity loss are four key topics that need emergent attention and action from World Bank Group. And secondly, while addressing the climate topics, that is mitigation, adaptation, and loss damage, these vulnerable groups fighting against climate change, such as emerging markets and developing nations, especially these ones from least developed countries and small islands developing states, they need the support like policy, climate finance, and technology support from WBG. So that's my answer.
I'm glad to hear that. That's actually a priority of what we're working on.
Yeah.
Glad that we are aligned. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chen.